Are we good to go, Suzanne?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to the April edition of the Future of Work webinars by Solve CC. I'm Mojdeh Iskandari, the founder and CEO of Solve CC, and it's truly my absolute pleasure to welcome today's keynote speaker, Danny Warshay. Professor Warshay is the executive director and professor at the Nelson Center for Entrepreneurship at Brown University. He leads creative and thought-provoking workshops on entrepreneurship around the world. He began his entrepreneurial journey while an undergraduate at Brown as a member of the startup leadership team at Clearview Software, which was acquired by Apple. Since then, he has co-founded and sold companies in fields ranging from software, advanced materials to consumer products and media. His course at Brown, The Entrepreneurial Process, has been recognized as the highest rated course on campus. Based on this course, Danny has written the award-winning book, See, Solve, Scale: How Anyone Can Turn an Unsolved Problem into a Breakthrough Success. He received an AB in History, magna cum laude from Brown University, and an MBA from Harvard Business School. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Danny, thank you for accepting to be with us, and over to you.
Such a pleasure to be here with you, Mojdeh, and with everybody who's online here. I wonder if I could impose on people, if you're in a position where you can, to turn on your cameras. It's so much nicer to be able to see, I hope, smiling faces than just names on a background. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's hard enough to engage with all of you two-dimensionally. I wish I were with you three-dimensionally, but if I could see your eyes, maybe I could read a little body language into what we're going to be doing over the next hour. I really want this to be valuable to you. And so I'm also going to ask you to participate. In fact, I'll share a few slides right now as we go. And, but I hope those don't distract you too much from what we're going to be doing more interpersonally. And thank you, Mojdeh, for introducing me. I'll just share a couple of intentions that I hope we'll all embrace together. And maybe you could look at these for about 10 seconds and absorb them on your own. And let's face it, the third one, there's not a lot of risk here, but what makes these really rewarding for me, and I hope for you, is for them to be participative. And I'm going to ask you, maybe in the chat or maybe out loud, we're a small enough group that I hope we can engage together. I'm not going to belabor who I am. You mentioned a couple of these key elements. I went to Brown. I'm a big proponent of liberal arts for anything. And if we're talking about the future of work, and the future of the world in general, I think those of us who have liberal arts backgrounds, and I know there's many on this call, I think are in a good position to help guide us. I do have some traditional business training from Harvard Business School and Procter & Gamble, and it's true that I'm a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts. Maybe more relevant for the little bit of time we have today, what do I know about entrepreneurship? And I'd say, well, I'm a practitioner. I've spent only part of my career as an academic, and I always like to say I'm sort of a fake academic. Actually in my title, I'm a professor of the practice. I couldn't do research if my life depended on it, but I know how to run a startup, and it's out of that experience, even starting back, as Mojdeh said, when I was a student at Brown. I was part of this startup that we sold to Apple. I learned by doing, and then I wove into the practitioner part of my background a lot of academic and research-based insights, and that's what I teach. I teach at Brown, and then you'll see in the far right-hand side of this slide, I do a lot of these kinds of things, workshops, especially in the wake of the book that I published, all over the world, and sometimes they're in places I had to find on a map. I didn't know where Slovenia was, really. I knew generally where it was, but now I've been to Slovenia about 5 times. I didn't know really where Bahrain was. I mean, again, sort of, but the U.S. Embassy asked me to go there and do some work with people who didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. And then I do a lot of work in the Middle East elsewhere with both Palestinian and Israeli teenagers to begin with through a group called Seeds of Peace. And then later in their careers, as they're older, working with them on startups that are designed to have breakthrough influence on the peace trajectory in the Middle East. And boy, we really need their help these days. I wrote this book not because it was my idea, it was my students' idea. They said, Professor Warshay, you're not doing the third step of the I'm not in my home office with a green screen, so this whole thing of holding up things is a little tricky. Um, they said I was not doing this third step of the process. I wasn't scaling, and they were right. And it was interesting to have the students become the teachers, and they said, you should write a book. And that's where the book came from. I'm going to start by asking people to participate a little bit here. This isn't a quiz. There's no right answer, no wrong answer, but I'd love it if at least in the chat, you would put here the first word or thought that comes to mind when you see the word entrepreneurship. No right answer. I ask this question in every country I teach in, always get different kinds of answers. Independence, yes. Problem solver, looks like, is it high? You may have read ahead. Creating, creators. That's so funny. A lot of people, creation, maybe that's a theme that's on your mind. Self-starter, right. Autonomy, leadership, Moshe puts, imagination expressed. That's cool. Coming from one entrepreneur to another. Yes. Profit. Yeah. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's not. Right. All those are really legitimate ways of expressing what comes to mind. And I'll share with you the definition that I use, which is not necessarily the right definition. It's what I used and what I was asked to use when I was first tapped on the shoulder by a former beloved professor of mine. And mind you, Brown does not have a business school. So I had to think very carefully about what it would mean to teach entrepreneurship in a dominantly liberal arts environment. And what I came up with was this definition: a structured process for solving problems without regard to the resources currently controlled. That's a mouthful. And there's a lot of concept there. And if we had a full semester, we would unpack it and we would do case studies around it, and students would probe it and experience it. This is the phrase in this definition that often people find surprising. And I don't know if any of you would. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't, based on what you shared with me, but structured process. Because often people don't think of entrepreneurship as following a structured process. They think of it as sort of being haphazard. In fact, how many of you could raise your hand or you could put it in the chat, how many of you have ever heard of the phrase entrepreneurial spirit? Yeah, I'm not surprised some of you have. Right. I had heard of that when I was asked 20 years ago to come to Brown to teach, and I had no idea what it was. And I certainly had no idea how to teach a spirit. And nevertheless, what I kept hearing from people when I was curious about what do you think I should do to teach entrepreneurship when I was asked to teach here, they said, oh, yeah, you should just kind of go and teach your students the entrepreneurial spirit. And I thought there certainly has to be something more if I'm going to be teaching in an Ivy League school students about entrepreneurship. And then I realized my faculty position is in the School of Engineering. And I thought, if we were being asked to teach students how to build a bridge, we would not simply say, go out and have the bridge building spirit and just throw up a bridge and see if it holds up the trucks and the cars. And if it comes crashing down to earth, then just have more bridge building spirit. That would be insane. We would never be trusted to teach anybody anything else. Because in bridge building, you can distill some fundamental principles that every bridge has in common, with lots of room for lots of different kinds of variation. No one bridge is exactly like any other. There's structural variation, aesthetic variation, operational variation, and nevertheless, you could distill some fundamental principles that all bridge building has in common. And so I thought I surely should be able to do the same thing for entrepreneurship. And so I thought, and I examined my own experience and I read the literature, and that's where see-solve scale comes from, because I realized we could distill some fundamental principles that every entrepreneurial process would have in common, with lots of room for variation. No one entrepreneurial venture is exactly like any other, with lots of room for whether you're doing this in a government context, in a nonprofit context, in a research environment, in a tech environment, in a different culture, different country, or even in a different future set, like many of you are thinking about. This is a see-solve scale process. And the three elements that we talk about are: the C stage is find and validate an unmet need. Start with a problem, because if you don't, you rush to be what I call a solution in search of a problem. And so the second stage is, with very few resources, figure out creatively. Lots of you use the word creatively or creation or create. Yeah, that's very much focused on the second stage, where you're solving the problem iteratively with room for failure and not getting it right the first time or maybe the fifth time. And then eventually do what my students accused me of not doing, and they were right: scale your solution so that you can have very big and long-term impact and create a very consequential solution to problems. And I'm going to share with you, in the short time we have, a couple of snippets of insights into some of my undergraduates turned entrepreneurs. And so entrepreneurship is for anyone who wants to turn an unsolved problem into a breakthrough success. In fact, the subtitle of my book is How Anyone Can Turn an Unsolved Problem into a Breakthrough Success. And so, very different from other books that assume you have to have a certain training or background or personality type, or you have to have a lot of resources. My methodology of see-solve scale is designed for anyone, and therefore it empowers many kinds of people who've been discriminated against by mainstream entrepreneurship, left behind, ignored. And so that's the emphasis, is for anyone. And so no, entrepreneurship is not a spirit. It's a structured process for solving problems. And just like bridge building, there are some fundamental steps that anyone can learn, they can get really good at, and they can apply. And these are those steps. See, figure out what problem to solve, do it on a small scale iteratively, and then scale so that you can have long-term impact. And again, if we had more time, we could unpack these in much more detail. But what I'm going to share with you right now is a very brief video of one of my students, the one in the middle, Ben Chesler. And I think you'll get a feeling for how he leaned into each of these three steps: the C stage, the solve stage, and the scale stage. And here's your homework. I want you to focus very carefully on what Ben says, the story he tells, and identify examples of those three steps. What are some ways he describes his C stage? How did he figure out the problem? Identify what he did on the small scale, the iterative stage first. And then what's some evidence of him really scaling? And I'm going to ask you to put in the chat, either as we go or after you hear the video, to tell us what those elements are. Okay, so this is going to be a quick video, but keep in mind his elements of see, solve, and scale.
Imperfect Foods really came out of an organization we ran in college called the Food Recovery Network, and we were recovering food from college campuses and bring it down to dining halls in the community. And through that work, we learned about the problem of food going to waste on farms and how 6 billion pounds, or 1 in 5 fruits and vegetables, never made it to a human mouth. And we didn't believe it. So what we did is we went out and we walked the farms, and the farmers took us on tours and showed us the cabbages and the cauliflower and the broccoli and the carrots that were left in the fields and just basically tossed away in bins to rot. And we knew that we saw the problem firsthand and we had to do something about it. And so we set up Imperfect Foods. with a pretty simple mission of recovering that food from going to waste and then delivering it to your door as a consumer for about 30% less than a grocery store. And you could do your part in helping prevent global warming and still save money at the same time. And we started out with this little warehouse in Emeryville, and we rented a forklift. And I remember every Friday the staff would pack boxes ourselves. And we kind of grew organically over that first year, and the outpouring of support from the community was incredible. And we knew we were onto something. And so we raised some venture capital to scale the business. And over the next 5 years, we grew it to have over 1,500, living wage jobs across the country. We now serve, I think, 40 or 43 different states. We raised around $200 million of venture capital. And what I'm most proud of is we recovered over 100 million pounds of produce and groceries from going to waste. So there's a long way to go to fight food waste, but we took a big dent out of it, and we're continuing to do even more every year.
So let's see. I saw a couple people put some things in the chat. Cherie says, going to the fields and meeting with farmers. Yeah, solve capturing food that would otherwise be wasted. Right. Scale warehouse to store food and distribute to prevent waste. They went to the fields to see themselves. Yes, Daphne, thank you for that C stage element. Mojade, you said food waste and seeing for yourself. Any scale, yeah, raised venture capital. Any other elements of scale? What else did he say that were solve, recovering, deliver at a 30% discount? D. Hansen. I don't know who D. Hansen is, but yes. What were a couple of other indicators of scale? Raising venture capital was 1,500 living wages. Steve, yes, exactly right. And what was the one he was most proud of? Does anybody remember what he said he was really excited about? I mean, he was excited about various states. Yeah, 43 states. But in terms of the measure of his impact, he said something about the thing he was most proud of. 100 million pounds of food distributed. Yeah. 1,000 times that, actually. Yes, exactly. Right. And so I love sharing that video, recaptured produce. Right. Because Ben was barely out of my class, barely out of Brown when he embarked on this. In fact, he said he was starting the venture by this little project he was doing at Brown. And so sometimes people are intimidated by the concept of entrepreneurship. And I show you Ben, and I'm going to show you one other person at the end to, I think, reduce that intimidation perception, because these are people who have way less experience and way less training than you guys have. And they're doing incredible things to scale solutions that are really changing the world. I mean, you can think of all the carbon savings of not having to produce food that goes to waste and deliver it and do all of that too. Okay, so let's move on to one other concept, which is often surprising for people to hear. And it's this tension between what I call the benefits of scarce resources and the burdens of abundant resources. And this is often surprising to people, especially in places around the world that have very scarce resources. If I'm in rural China, or if I'm in Ramallah, Palestine, and especially if people perceive that they have fewer resources, they're often, again, intimidated. They lack confidence. And actually, especially in the C stage and in the solve stage, it benefits you to have fewer resources. It forces you to collaborate with other people who might bring complementary skills and resources to the table. It enables you to fail fast and fail cheap and try things out without a lot of pressure on perfecting a solution quickly. The opposite is true too. I did 6 workshops last year with the US military. Certainly abundant resources. And they were surprised to hear that their abundant resources might work as a disadvantage to them. Because you're so focused on the way you traditionally have done things, you miss new opportunities. You might be overconfident that the way that things have always worked is going to be the recipe for success moving forward. You get very fixed on a particular outcome rather than being open to divergent thinking that can help open your eyes to new ways of imagining the world. And so I love the way this monastic proverb summarizes this insight, which is that freedom is found in the context of limitation. And I'll give you one quick example. How many of you ever heard of the Casper Mattress Company? I'm curious, does anybody have a Casper mattress? Okay, Mojada, thank you. Yeah, Casper Mattress was started by two students of mine, Luke Sherwin and Neil Parikh, who couldn't believe how insane the existing process of buying a mattress was. You have to go to a showroom, lie on a mattress, have pressure from a salesperson, have to shell out hundreds, if not more dollars, commit to a mattress that you're going to have for probably 10 years. If you don't like it, you can't return it. Casper, as those of you who are familiar with it, completely revolutionized the way you buy a mattress now. The best part of that story is that Luke and Neil were my students. They knew nothing about starting a mattress company. The only thing they knew about a mattress, they will tell you, is that you sleep on one. That was a good example of the benefits of scarce resources. The incumbent mattress companies, who had lots of history and brands and established infrastructure and a way of doing things, they, you would think, would be in a really good position to dominate a new approach to mattresses. And it was just the opposite. It was the burden of abundant resources. So I don't know your backgrounds or what you do, but if you're in a place, could be a big nonprofit, could be a big government agency, could be a big company. If you're in a place where you have lots of resources, at the early stages of entrepreneurship, especially the C stage where you're just trying to figure out if there's a problem, and in the solve stage where you're trying to solve it nimbly, you're at a disadvantage to those of you who have very little resource at your disposal. And again, I see the body language of people in under-resourced communities change when we talk about this, because to that point, they have thought that they're at a disadvantage in the world of entrepreneurship. And in fact, it's the opposite, that they're at a really significant advantage. And in the book, there's some really exciting and empowering examples of that, of people from different places around the world who have taken hold of the see-solve scale process and used it to identify and solve problems. I know we're a little pressed for time, so I'm going to wrap up with two quick additional concepts, and then I'll share another quick video, and then we'll move to questions and comments. Is that okay, Mojada? Okay. So I'm asked a lot about, should you do entrepreneurship as a team? And if you do, what's the secret for creating that team? And I spend a lot of time on this in the book, a whole chapter, a whole section, and I spend a lot of time on it in my teaching because of this statistic in the upper left-hand corner, which is that 65% of startups fail because of people tensions and team problems. And so I'm here to try to preempt some of that concern. The real secret to team composition for success is words that we hear all the time, words that are coming under fire these days, diversity, which is a really important word, and it's diversity in every way possible. Diverse teams tend to outperform undiverse teams in very specific ways, and I'll share a nuance to that. But I mean diversity writ large. I definitely do mean gender and race. I mean personality, both introverts and extroverts. Introverts tend to be discriminated against in the fields of entrepreneurship and maybe everywhere. Points of view, skill sets, background. But here's the surprising nuance. And they're represented by these Venn diagrams at the bottom, which are from Francis Fry and Ann Morris of Harvard Business School. If you're a diverse team and all you are is inviting diverse people to your team, but you're not really inviting them to share the full breadth of their diversity, all you do is what's represented in that little blue section in the middle of that diverse team Venn diagram. The sad thing is homogeneous teams, who by definition overlap 100%, actually outperform those diverse teams who don't embrace the full breadth of what everybody is bringing to the table. That's a bummer. That might be a really shocking surprise to those of you who haven't heard this before. The real sweet spot is on the far right. It's what I call inclusive teams. And this is both diverse teams, people who represent all these different elements of diversity, and teams who make a safe and trusting space for everybody to bring their full and true selves to the table. And if you're a diverse and inclusive team, you tend to outperform both just diverse teams and homogeneous teams. So that may be a little nuance that's surprising to you, that we would think that diversity in every case would be best. It's not. If you are only inviting people to the dance, but you're not inviting them to dance, then you're actually going to underperform those of teams that are just homogeneous. The key is to invite them to the dance and also invite them to dance. The last element that I'm going to share, and these are kind of the main themes that you'll find in C-Solve Scale, and they're the bedrock of what I teach. And this is, again, maybe a surprising insight from a Stanford psychologist who says, the biggest problem growing up today is actually not stress, it's meaninglessness. Now, we all are experiencing stress, I understand, but even more is the biggest problem is meaninglessness. And so I have a whole section in the book devoted to this, and it's surrounded by this concept called ikigai. How many of you have ever heard of the word ikigai? I think some of you have. Yeah. It's a Japanese word. I taught in Japan. I took some students to Japan the last 2 Januaries, and it was fun to talk about ikigai there and to learn about it. Ikigai is a Japanese word that says live a meaningful life. And it embraces these 4 components. The first is passion. Do what you love doing. The second is drive, which means do what you're really good at. The third is purpose, which means do something that is providing meaning or purpose to the world. And I know I don't have to overemphasize that to all of you. And yeah, do something that's going to pay you fairly for the value you're adding. And I emphasize that because you could do and really get good at see, solve, scale, those elements we talked about earlier. But if you're not doing it in a context where you're focused on your ikigai, you're just not going to be successful. And so I have some counter examples in the book about people who did that, tried to kind of force fit something that they thought was appropriate for launching a startup, but it was not their ikigai and they were not going to be successful. You can tell from somebody like Ben that what he is doing is his ikigai. And so I'm going to end with one more student video. It's of the woman on the far right, Emma Butler, who took my class, and you'll hear a little bit about her first day's experience in the class. And here too, focus on what you hear. In this case, maybe a little bit focused on her ikigai. What is she telegraphing to us that is evidence that this is her ikigai? The book, as you know, is C-Solve Scale, How Anyone Can Turn an Unsolved Problem into a Breakthrough Success, underscore anyone. And you always come to mind. In fact, I describe you in the book as a reluctant entrepreneur. Can you rewind and just share with us the short story about your first exposure to entrepreneurship in my course?
Absolutely. I had no idea that I was ever going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't know anything about what the methodology of becoming an entrepreneur was. As a visual arts and French student at Brown, I really didn't think I was prepared to do the financial modeling, to think critically about entrepreneurship, to do the Harvard Business School case studies. I didn't think I had anything in me, let alone after the course to build a company. But as I walked in, quite literally shaking because I was so nervous that I was going to be called on, or that it was going to be too hard on the first day and I was going to have to drop out right there and then it'd be so embarrassing. I sat there and you briefly explained a little bit about this C-Solve Scale methodology. And I thought, I can understand that. That's something that I can digest. And that's a great first step. C, I can do that. I can find a problem. I know a problem and it's an unmet need. Okay, I got that. And so being able to break it down into these digestible steps was really great for somebody like me that was really starting at ground zero. The problem with Intimately, it was a personal one. About 10 years ago, my mom became disabled and it became extremely difficult for her to find clothing that she could get on independently that was both functional and fashionable. And so the problem that we're solving is making sure that the 600 million women worldwide that have some sort of disability that affects the way they dress have options in clothing that is both functional and fashionable and can bring them confidence. And intimately, we're in the scale stage. We just closed our seed round of $1 million led by the British Fashion Council as their very first investment. I'm currently based in Paris. Our team of about 5 full-time women who are both disabled and non-disabled are living in the States. We've just released our first line that was launched in Vogue Business, Business of Fashion. We've been in Forbes, Glamour, Cosmopolitan, and we're ready to take this scale and go all the way with it.
You know, it's hard for me not to get emotional when I hear Emma speak, because, you know, you heard what she said. She was shaking walking into the, I hope I'm not that intimidating, walking into the first day of class. But she realized that actually, if you break entrepreneurship down into these 3 elements, she could get that. And she was turned on to solving a problem that her mother was experiencing, personal passion based on experience. Yeah, she is such a good example. She's a mentor for our class this semester. She's on our board for the Nelson Center. She's a very generous contributor to everything we do. And so she's also a really good inspiration, I think, to those of us who may not feel like we have in us what you need to do this see, solve, scale process. And Ben and Emma are really good examples of, they had no prior training, and they were able to do everything that you saw in what they were doing. I love what Steve says. He says, to entrepreneurs, is human, to trust is divine. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to stop here, and there's some other things we could talk about, but I'll stop my slides and see what's on your mind. Are there questions, comments, insights? Yeah, I love what Steve says. Emma's is a human story, right? And that's what I hope all of entrepreneurship is. I mean, that's kind of the basis of Ikigai. You're making impact on the world, and you're making impact in some very human ways. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think?
Danny, if I may start with a question, first of all, thank you. The way you're explaining it, the first time I listened to you, I just went ahead and bought your book, and then I didn't stop listening to it.
You bought the audio version.
I bought the audio version,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's my voice.
I know, and it was soothing, by the way. Uh, Here's my question to you. The students in community colleges, they don't always have the opportunities that your Ivy League students have. The potential is there. The access to opportunities, not always. And I'm not expecting an answer today, but is there any way that we can think through how to team them up? And it's a long-term process with some of your students in some of your ventures to give them that access as well, because I think for some of them it's gonna be life-changing. Again, I'm not trying to put you on spot. I just want to
No,
put
I really
question out
appreciate the
there.
question. I think one thing I would remind us all about is the benefits of scarce resources.
Yeah.
Because, and by the way, I have transfer students from community colleges at Brown. And I know, and I think it's a really good way to become educated. And I think it's a good way in some cases to start and then to transition to some other place. So I have great respect for my fellow teachers at community colleges. And I do think that sometimes there's the burden of abundant resources at a place like Brown, that we have too many resources for people to feel in a good position to, or motivated to change the world. On the other hand, at the Nelson Center, we have all of our students, and last year we taught, in our classes alone, we taught over 1,600 students, and we had many thousands of others in all of our co-curricular and venture support. But this principle of the benefits of scarce resources tends to resonate in places, like I said, around the world, but well, a initiative that our students created called Young Entrepreneurs Program. And they came to us and one woman who was my student a few years ago came to me and she said, we're very privileged to be at Brown with lots of resources. The Nelson Center surrounding us within walking distance are under-resourced communities with high school students who may never be exposed to such resources. They may never go to college. And we'd like to create a program that will invite those students to come to Brown, come to the Nelson Center, and the students whom you taught, will teach them the same Seesaw scale methodology. And needless to say, I loved the idea. And I said, go do it. And we provided them some funding and some resources. It's now grown to be a tremendous success. To fast forward, the student who started that is now working on it full time. It's a 501c3. It has tremendous funding. It now has chapters at Columbia, Stanford, Yale, UC Berkeley, UCLA, and a few places around the world, all slightly different flavors. And many of those high school students who come to campus weekly and learn the Seesaw scale method have launched ventures. And many of them who had never been on a college campus have applied to college. Some have gotten into Brown, some have gotten into Penn, some have gotten into the URI, some are now going to community college. It's a tremendous achievement by our students. I don't take credit for this. And now those same high school students in some cases are moving their ventures forward so aggressively that we've created YEP 2.0, which is kind of an advanced version of that. And for some of them who have a summer to devote to their ventures, we've created a summer camp at the Nelson Center. And so I don't know if there's any learning from that kind of experience that dovetails with your question, but it strikes me that there's no barrier for students from different resourced environments and communities, maybe community colleges, to embrace what we teach. And if the Seesaw scale resources can be helpful there, I'm thrilled for that to have happened.
Thank you for that.
I see a question in the chat. Is that, how do you pronounce your name, Caron? Or is it just Karen?
That sounds fancy, but it's just Karen.
Just Karen. Maybe you could summarize your question verbally. Do you mind?
Well, I think it's an honor that you were selected as a favorite class at Brown. And so I suspect that you don't just lecture from 10-year-old notes in the front of the classroom. So I was wondering how your class might be structured.
Great question. Yeah, I do not. I mean, even today, I hope I'm not lecturing because I don't know how to do anything if it's not interactive. I teach Socratic method. It's how I learned at Harvard Business School. We do all cases. Every day we do a different case. I call on students. They work in teams on a venture that they create from scratch, from the C stage, the solve stage, to the scale stage. They presented just now in class a 3-minute pitch, very preliminarily, to their fuller end of the semester pitch that they're going to pitch to venture capitalists. Yeah, it is very experiential. It is very interactive. It is very Socratic. Is that what you were expecting, or is that a surprise?
That is what I was expecting, and it's no surprise that you and Moshe are connected because you're of the same thinking. I love it. Thank you.
Okay. Charisse, you have your hand up.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I teach at a rural college in Weed, California. The student body is less than 3,000.
Okay.
So I'm going to be teaching an entrepreneurship course for the first time. We got it approved, and so this fall, and I'm excited that I've been approved for the NACCE $5,000 pitch. So we'll be doing a pitch contest this fall as well. And I'm going to get to my point quickly. By it being a rural college, there's limited job opportunities, industry, that type of thing. So students, a lot of them have to go away or leave the community, and some of them don't want to leave the community. They like where they live. So my thing is getting them, and I'm definitely going to get your book and consider it for the course, because in offering the entrepreneurship class, I'm trying to I'm going to offer it to, in the pitch contest, I'm trying to get the college and faculty and students to understand it's not just for business students. Entrepreneurship, like you say, is for everyone, to teach them what entrepreneurship really is. And there's that limited resources. There's so many opportunities within the community, problems or issues that they can solve and create ventures from that. So that's what I'm excited about. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. But my last question is, if in creating a syllabus or course from your class, do you have an outline that you normally use? Or I heard you say you used a Socratic method, which is definitely doable, but just want to know if you had any resources along with your book to help someone who's developing a course based on the book.
Sure. Let's see. I have a Google Doc form of my syllabus. Yeah, I'm going to share the link in the chat, and I think that could show you in as much detail as you might imagine.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
But I think the book, I'm hearing from a whole bunch of people around the world who are using the book in ways that I didn't intend to be a text. And so the text tends to be something that they use for their classes. I can't seem to see how I can share this with everyone. I don't know, but maybe D. Hansen can ask his question while I'm searching for that. I'm going to share this with, maybe it's the whole group. Sorry, I think I may see it.
Thank you.
Here we go.
My name is Deacon, by the
Deacon.
way. Yeah.
Okay, you just appear as D. Hansen.
Yeah, I'm named after a football player from the 60s.
Who's that?
I guess you're not a football fan.
I'm a big football fan, but I may be a little younger than that too.
LA Rams, Deacon Jones.
Deacon Jones. Yes, of course
yeah.
I know Deacon Jones.
My dad liked the Rams. Anyway,
big lineman.
I teach. Yeah, big, yeah.
And a bit of a Hollywood star too, if I remember.
Yeah. I think there's a song about him too.
Okay.
Somewhere.
So what can I do to help?
I'm teach at a community college in a fairly underserved community out in Hawaii, and students, it's a cyclical thing. Like, you get into the mode of, okay, you get out of high school, you got to go to work and make money. So their minds aren't really in that C stage, where you are looking for problems to solve. And even if they do see the problem to solve, just the idea of that ever happening is hard to grasp, because sometimes these students have 1-2 jobs just to get by, and the whole idea is you're going to go out, get a job, and you're going to work for someone for the rest of your life. So other than just saying, okay, brainstorm, do you have like a developmental stage to teach people how to see things?
Yes. So I have a whole workshop. You can imagine I go deep as needed on each of these stages. Today was designed to give you some grounding in the fundamental principles, maybe a little bit of a tease. Actually, the workshop that's most in demand is what you asked about. How do you figure out what problem to solve? I teach a method in the book called bottom-up research, and it's a method that you can learn. And I do a whole workshop on it. And then I have workshops on all the elements that we talked about. I have a workshop on the solve stage. I have a workshop on the scaling stage. I have a workshop on team formation. And so, yeah, but I'd say I'm not here to sell the book, but the book was a response to that inquiry from my students who said, lots and lots of people can benefit from this. How can you reach them? And the book is designed to help you do that, whether it's my voice and the one that Moshe is listening to. That was its own challenge because it was during COVID and the publishing company said, we can't have you in a recording studio. So they sent me a kit that I used in my house, and I was online live with a audio engineer and a theatrical director for a week straight for 7 hours a day. And it was fun to do the recording of it. So if you like to listen to the book, that may be more up your alley. But I'd say the book is a good first step for understanding some depth behind the question you're asking.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we have like 3 minutes until you have to adjourn for something that you're thinking about. Is there one last question that anybody wants to ask, or I could give you some time back? I see Charisse and Deke's hands up, but I know they've already asked questions. Anything else on your mind? Anything else you want to summarize with at the end, Mojada?
Danny, I really wanted to thank you. The last 10 minutes, we are going to talk about Solve-CC and additional resources available to this group. But I have been doing this for a while, and I learn every day. What I learned when I listened to you the first time through, I don't even know where it was, and I reached out to you. I mean, the way you are presenting, the language you're using, the way it's accessible, I think that can make a whole lot difference for everyone, including students. And I will definitely reach out to you. I noted the Young Entrepreneurs Program to see if there is anything online that we can offer to community college students. So thank you again for accepting to be a part of our conversation today.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. I mean, it's part of my life's mission. It's part of my Ikigai. I mean, the reason I do what I do, first of all, is thanks to that professor of mine who tapped me on the shoulder. My response to him when he asked me 20 years ago, come teach at Brown, was, I've never taught anything, like never Sunday school. And yet he, like all of you who are teachers, know things in your students that we don't know ourselves. And so I'm really pleased that Barrett Hazeltine asked me to do what I do. And if you're interested in more resources, my website, dannywarshay.com, is a good place. And the last thing I'll do is invite you to join on LinkedIn. There's a network. There are 2 networks now, actually. One is called the Warshay Innovation Network. Anybody who's been in a workshop of mine is invited. All my students are invited. If you request entry into it, I'll be happy to provide that. There's also a separate one for C-Solve Scale. And I'd love for all of you who've read the book or will be reading the book to enter that one too. If you just search for Warshay Innovation Network or separately C-Solve Scale on LinkedIn and request to join, there's people from all over the world doing all sorts of things, many educators. And I hope you'll participate in that as well. If there's anything more I can do beyond this, Mojada knows how to reach me. And
You know where to find you. Thank you.
you
Thank you
do.
for
It's
that.
been a pleasure to be with you today. I will adjourn and you'll do your own work here. But thank you very much. And if any of you ever find yourself anywhere near Providence, please come visit the Nelson Center.
Thank you, Danny.
My pleasure. Take care, everyone.
So I would love to get your feedback on these sessions. We are trying hard to bring you the speakers with the topics that are meaningful to you. I'm thinking of the questions asked by Charisse and Deacon. There are some other opportunities here. If you haven't heard about Solve-CC, nonprofit created focusing on students, offering them access. And this is experiential learning, not the way it's used in the commonly in the community colleges, but the way that we send them out to the community through its competition based, asking them to identify local problems and ideate solution to address them. Now, what we have done with NACCE, in partnership with NACCE, we have fully sponsored Shaping the Future of Work Together, the Future of Work Challenge for you. It is free for all of you. All you need is to sign up as a champion for your college, to have your students participating in those. And let me get to the next slide here. Just bear with me 1 second. So why now? Because Tech is advancing at an unprecedented rate. The growing skill gap in the workforce is more visible today than before. And we need to have our students, your students, to be exposed to problem-solving skills outside of the classroom. They need to be exposed to those so that they can apply what they're learning in the class to real-world situations. There is no cost to your institutions. You don't need to go through any bureaucracy at your colleges. It's easy to implement. And there are some, here are a snapshot of benefits for students for this specific challenge. They will showcase their creativity and vision, unlock their skills in digital storytelling. We are telling them they are allowed to use AI. They don't have to, they are allowed, but they need to tell us. There is one question in the final submission, how you use to AI, just to make sure they used it as a co-pilot and not replacing them. There is, of course, competition aspect. Winning a prize and being announced at the next NACCE annual conference in October is going to be priceless for them. And then get them involved to think about future of work. There are tons of questions and conversations going on about future of work. The one who should be involved, students, because this is their future, they are not a part of these conversations. So we are telling them your voice matters. So become a part of it. And that's the beginning of being involved in all those conversations. If you decide to become a champion, all you need to do is spread the word to your college, share the opportunity with your colleagues and students. And if you want to coach some of the students, not teach them, be a sounding board to them when they are going through that exercise of imagine the future of work in a way that they would like to be a part of it. Now, this should be future of work challenge is really, again, amplify the voice of the students. And the final submission is a 2-minute video of their vision of the work in the future. Danny talked about inclusivity and diversity in the team. One person cannot attend. We ask them to build up the team with different perspective and then come up with an idea, bring resources. They are going through that exercise, which is going to help them with creativity, seeing the problem, future-oriented thinking, and being exposed to team with different perspective. They can sign up until April 30th, and the submission deadline is August 17, because then we need to go through these videos and select the winners for NACCE in October 25th. So if you're interested, I know I'm going fast, but you can reach out to me or my partner in crime, Yui, anytime with any question. And by the way, we have Solve CC hours offering to everyone who's registered every Thursday from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. PT. So 11:30 to 12:30 Eastern time. Go to Future of Work Challenge/champions. The application will take you less than 2 minutes. We want to know who you are, where you are, and one of your colleagues at Alvin Community College, she has signed up about 2 or 3 months ago. She has the cycle of 8-week classes. She has put it as an assignment into her classes because she thought the students, and she's teaching business, she thought her students are going to learn more going through that process than the traditional material and teaching students what is business and what is entrepreneurship. This is just one example, but we have other programs at Solve CC. So the next webinars that we are offering through NACCE is going to be on May 22nd. And our goal is for that specific webinar to have Solve-CC students to talk to you. They're going to talk about their experience. Some of them have submitted their applications. Some of them are in the process. And by the way, we are working with a group of students to help them, to coach them how to become facilitator, to run a workshop on future of work at the upcoming Pathway to Prosperity Summit organized by NACCE in Tallahassee in June. So amazing thing, the students just join us. There are a group of about 15 of them. They are hungry to learn. We are just going to have a few remote sessions with them. This is just about boosting their confidence so that they know I can do that too. And they are going to be facilitating each session for all of you if you're attending, for the, I would say, us adults in the room on Future of Work session. Any last minute question before we wrap up?
I just want to say thank you. Appreciate this session. Very, very enlightening. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. Anything else? Comments, question? I know we usually leave 30 minutes for our guest speaker, so we have time to interact more. I just didn't want to cut the conversation and the presentation from Danny because I thought that was amazing.